What's up, guys? This is Zach with Top Tech Nation, and today we're going to be looking at the deck that James Arnold used to take first place at the Virginia Regionals this past weekend, and that's going to be Quad Lapras GX with Wobbuffet. Now, this deck is really interesting because it's basically your anti-meta deck. It's got a lot of cards in it that just kind of punish your opponent, like Crushing Hammer, Enhanced Hammer, Delinquent, things like that, but it's got a lot of really other cards that just make it a really unique build and just kind of show you how, how skilled of a deck builder that James is. So things like Steven, Team Skullgrunt, things like that. So we will be going over that. And, his opponent in the finals had actually gone pretty much undefeated. I think he had gone he had like 40 points going into the finals, which is pretty insane. I think he was like 12-0-4. And it was Grant Manley, a pretty well-known player. And he was running another anti-meta deck. He was playing like a quad Wobbuffet type of build with Ninja Boy. So depending on what your opponent was playing, he'd basically shut off your abilities, play hammers and things like that. And then if you're against like a Volcanion deck that doesn't really play Pokemon Ranger, they just play a bunch of big basics, you just Ninja Boy into a Jolteon and basically you win the game because there's really no way they can counter that. But, unfortunately, James has a really good matchup against something like this because, he's not really focused on attacking so much as, just kind of disrupting his opponent, wiping his energy off the board, and then finally you start attacking that way. So we're going to be going over his deck list here, and it's a pretty simple deck list. I mean, if you're on a budget, you could definitely afford this because as you can see, there are no Shamans, nothing like that. This was before Guardians Rising, so no Tapu Lele, anything like that. But, otherwise, I mean, what's really expensive in this deck list? Maybe the Verse Seekers that might be like $5 or something, but, otherwise this is a pretty budget deck, I would say, for the most part. But, aside from my rambling, let's go ahead and jump into the list. We have Quad Lapras, and Lapras GX is, really bulky. It's got 190 HP. It's a water type, so it can take advantage of things like Rough Seas and even Aqua Patch later on. And it has this attack called Collect, and you just draw 3 cards. Very simple, nothing overly complicated, nothing like that at all. And this is the attack that you're going to be using throughout the game. You might use it like 25 times, who knows? But you're going to be drawing cards and hopefully drawing into what you need. You're not really playing Professor Sycamore or anything like that, so you don't have to worry about discarding your hand ever. If you have a terrible hand, you can just lay down N, you can lay down Skyla, Steven, whatever, and get exactly what you need. But, hopefully when you play Collect, you're drawing into things like Crushing Hammer, Enhanced Hammer, Team Flare Grunt, Puzzle of Time to reuse everything. And that's really the strategy of the deck. Lapras is very bulky. With the Fighting Fury build, it's got a whopping 230 HP, so it's in the realm of Wailord EX, which has 250. And you might be wondering to yourself, well, why didn't he just play like Wailord? And the answer is, look at the attacks here. Collect is, it's draw power. It's drawn into what you need. It's pretty simple. We have Blizzard Burn. It does 160. It says it can't attack during your next turn, but that's fine. I mean, I can just use Collect the following turn. And keep in mind with the Fighting Fury belt, that's doing 170. So that's just enough to knock out a lot of different attackers if they don't have like a Fighting Fury belt attached. And then lastly, we have Ice Beam GX. So for 100, it paralyzes. So there's no coin flip, nothing like that. It automatically paralyzes. And that's going to be really good against something like, say Jolteon EX or, anything else like that. Basically, you paralyze it so they can't use their attack and become immune to you, and then you just kind of finish them off the following turn. So, really situational GX attack, but it's a really good one because automatic paralysis is huge. If you can't play Olympia, you can't play Switch or Escape Rope to get out of it, you're basically stuck and your opponent is going to get a knockout. So, really good card here. And, he also played one Wobbuffet, and this Bide Barricade ability shuts off all abilities in play. So in the hand, in each player's discard, in play. So, I mean, they can't really do anything. You don't play abilities to begin with, but it really helps against Decidueye. That is why he's going to be playing this in here, because, naturally, Lapras is actually weak to Grass. But if you start with Wobbuffet, or you're able to get Wobbuffet out, well, I mean, you can just basically sit there, and as they're setting up, you can just constantly hammer energies off, Decidueye or Lugia or whatever they have out. So Wobbuffet is, basically the anti-meta card. We have a lot of cards with abilities, Volcanion, Decidueye, just tons of abilities in the format right now. So Wobbuffet has pretty much become almost a staple in a lot of decks because it's just, it's a nice tech to just stop abilities so you can get set up. Now, as you can see here, the bulk of this deck is actually going to be trainer cards. He plays a whopping 45 trainer cards. I mean, that's 3/4 of the deck. You're not playing Trainer's Mail or anything because you can just play Lapras's first attack and just keep drawing cards that way. And by, omitting Trainer's Mail, he's able to fit in more supporters, more tech cards like the Team Rocket's Handiwork, the Skull Grunt, things like that. So, as far as the supporter line here, I really like it because we're kicking off with 4 Team Flare Grunt. I love this. If you've seen my Sylveon GX deck profile, it's actually a very similar strategy. Sylveon doesn't get to use Rough Seas or anything like that because it's on a water type, but the overall strategy is very good. You're drawing 3 cards. In Sylveon's case, you're searching for whatever 3 cards you want, so kind of a drawback but a plus as well. But the 4 Team Flare Grunt is really strong. Discarding an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. I mean, simple as that. Combine it with something like Enhanced Hammer, and it's just really hard for your opponent to even make an attack. As far as drawing cards here, he just plays 3 in. I mean, why not? I mean, you play 3 in, so if you are forced into a really bad hand, if your opponent is about to win, you put it down, put them down to 1 card, and then you just kind of start attacking them. So really good throughout the game, and you're almost always going to be drawing 6 cards off of this because you just simply use collect, you disrupt your opponent, you keep drawing 6 every turn, and then eventually, eventually if you're only drawing 2 or 3 cards off in, you don't have to necessarily play it. But overall, really good draw supporter here. We're going to be playing 2 Hex Maniac because, again, Decidueye is a very strong deck. This deck is going to naturally lose to Decidueye if you couldn't, shut off the abilities or anything like that. Now, if you can shut off the abilities, it's a completely different game because, yeah, Decidueye is hitting you for weakness, but that doesn't really matter when you are hammering off pretty much everything off their board every turn. So, generally, you should have a favorable matchup just because you have so many ways to lock their abilities. And it's not just good against that as well. I mean, like I said, anything with abilities. So Shaman EX, Volcanion EX, pretty much anything in the format, Hoopa EX is going to be, kind of detrimental. They're going to be, falling to Hex Maniac because they rely on abilities just so much. We also play a Delinquent here, and Delinquent discards a stadium, so it's pretty good if somehow they beat you in the stadium war, and your opponent also has to discard 3 cards from their hand. So if they're holding on to some cards like special energies or just energy in general or supporter, if they're only playing 3 or 4 cards in their hand, you can play Delinquent and really, seriously disrupt them because it's really hard to come back at that point. I mean, it's really hard to play against something that is constantly drawing cards and stuff like that, and you don't even have a hand to counter it. You can't attach energy, you can't do anything, and then meanwhile Lapras just gets set up. So Delinquent is really good, especially in the late game. You're just kind of forcing your opponent to kind of mill themselves down to make these tougher decisions, and eventually, most of the time they're probably going to lose because they're either going to deck out or just run out of resources in general. We're also going to be playing 1 Lysander. This is mainly because Team Flare Grunt's not really going to be working if it's not in the active, your opponent's a Pokemon. So we're going to Lysander something up that's kind of building up energy, and you're just going to knock off the energy that way. And even later game, it could be good if they run out of resources. You just bring something up that has 2 or 3 retreat cost, and they can't retreat out. So your opponent basically has to concede to the next game because, otherwise it's just going to slow the time down, and they're probably going to lose anyway. So Lysander's a really good card in here. Definitely recommend it. He also plays 1 copy of Olympia, and I like this because it's not only a switch card for Lapras, but you can also switch into Wobbuffet just in case you're item locked or Decidueye is just running rampant or something, and it's also letting you heal. So basically, between this and Rough Seas, I mean, it's really hard to knock out 1 Lapras, let alone 3 Lapras and Wobbuffet. Wobbuffet is your 7th prize attacker, essentially, so yeah, you pretty much have to knock out everything that's on your board if you're playing this deck, and it's really tough because you might not think healing 30 or healing 60 a turn really matters, but when you have this big basic that's 230 HP, it's really tough to do. So yeah, just in general, Olympia is really good just to kind of switch out if you're in that kind of situation. We're also going to be playing 2 Skyla, and James is probably playing Skyla here because there's so many trainer cards. Basically, you might as well say the card says search your deck for one of 45 cards in the deck, reveal it and put it in your hand, because he plays a ton of trainer cards in the deck. And this could be a supporter, this could be a Professor's Letter to get an energy, this could be a puzzle at a time. So if you already have one in your hand, you could do a double puzzle at a time kind of play. Just really versatile, and you can always Verse Seeker to get it back. So he's basically made it so that you can Verse Seeker to get pretty much any card back in general, or Skyla to get any card in general. So you don't really see Skyla played a lot in the format right now because it's really it's situational. I mean, you're getting a card of your choice from the deck, but you're only getting one card. So a lot of people prefer just drawing a brand new card or risking it with N or something. But, in this kind of deck that's really slow, you're looking for specific cards every single turn of the game. And this is why Skyla is really good in that. And, the MVP, according to James, and probably according to a lot of people that saw this on the streams and stuff, is going to be Steven. Now, this is a card that is never played, I can just kind of tell you, but search your deck for a supporter card and a basic energy and put them in your hand. So, this deck is pretty much screaming a card like Steven, because Steven, you need a lot of supporters. You need to get the Flare Grunts and Olympias and things like that. A lot of, 1-of cards that you may honestly not even see otherwise. It's kind of boosting consistency in that regard, but also because of the energy, there might be times where you actually run out of energy. There's not ways to actually search out the energy besides like Professor's Letter and Skyla. So if you've played like Energy Recycler or something like that, you've got the energy in the deck, but you're just kind of whiffing on it. Suddenly you have so many more outs to it, because you can Verse Seeker for Steven, play the Steven, get a Flare Grunt and Water Energy, and you're good to go. So, it's a really cheap card. I mean, I'm sure it's no more than 30-40 cents online, but it just kind of goes to show you how creative you can actually be with this game. You don't have to, follow or, adhere to like a certain deck structure at all. This is a really creative deck, and it's really interesting deck and definitely fun to play. So Steven is definitely warranted here, and it's a really great choice here. And then finally, just for a little more disruption, we have Team Rocket's Handiwork. Flip 2 coins for each heads, discard 2 cards from your opponent's deck. I didn't really get to see how often he played this card. I don't know if he actually played it in the finals against Grant Manley, but later in the game, I mean, if they're running out of resources, this is really good, especially combined with something like Delinquent. I mean, you could discard their last Verse Seeker, their last supporter, the last special energy in their deck, or something like that. So really puts a timetable on your opponent's deck, especially if they're getting low on their deck. So really good, especially late game there. And then finally, Team Skullgrunt, which I did see this in the finals, and I will post the stream of the finals in the description below. And I think it was streamed by the Meta Deck, so check them out. I think it's twitch.tv/the Meta Deck, but it should be on there, but I'll link it for you guys. But Team Skullgrunt is another really interesting card. Your opponent reveals their hand, discard 2 energy cards from it, and it doesn't specify basic or special. So if your opponent flips their hand over, they've got 2 DCE or 2 double dragon energy, they have to discard them, and that's really hard to get back if you're not playing something like Special Charge or Puzzle of Time. So it's very situational, but if they have a bigger hand, especially early on, chances are they probably have energy in their hand. They're just kind of holding on to it. So I think this is a really good disruptive card, and it really just kind of goes with the theme of disruption. It's really an anti-meta deck here. You're just kind of punishing your opponent for playing special energies, you're hammering off their energy, things like that. So Skullgrunt's really interesting here. And then as far as the other items, it's pretty straightforward. I don't have to zoom into all of these here, but Crushing Hammer is going to knock off energy. Enhanced Hammer is going to be knocking off special energy. Professor's Letter is searching for, energy as well. Puzzle of Time, of course, it's got 2 effects. The main effect is that we're going to be playing 2 of them down at the same time and getting any 2 cards back from the discard. So if you're familiar with, Sableye's Junk Hunt from all the way back in like Dark Explorers 4 or 5 years ago, basically the same thing, except it's any 2 cards. It's not just item cards. So really good to get these plays set up where you double puzzle for like 2 Enhanced Hammer or Flare Grunt Enhanced Hammer. Just in general, just really strong, especially if you can play 2 at once. He's playing 2 Switch, it looks like, 4 Verse Seeker, 4 Rough Seas to make sure he not only wins the Stadium War, but just kind of, denies knockouts. He's healing every single turn of the game. But yeah, really good there. And 3 Fighting Fury Belt, like I said, this is pretty much making Lapras in the realm of a Wailord, except better. There's not really a whole lot of stuff that can do 250 damage anyway, so, Wailord is kind of outdated in that sense, because, yeah, it's big and bulky, but it doesn't really do much beyond that. It doesn't really have any attacks or anything like that, but I like, James's choice of Lapras because of the attacks, and Fighting Fury Belt makes it, essentially a Wailord EX anyway. And then I think the final cards we haven't really gone over are Nest Ball. And Nest Ball is just search your deck for a basic, put it on the bench. He doesn't really need 4 copies of Ultra Ball or anything like that in the deck, because if you start with Lapras, you're pretty much good already. You can always Skyla for Nest Ball if you want to get another one out. Nest Ball is really just a free search card. It gets Wobbuffet or Lapras in play, which I really like. And then finally, Energy Recycler. Now, normally you might see something like Super Rod because you might be afraid that something's prized. The energy recycler, it puts 5 basic energies, so 5 water energies from the discard into the deck, and that's going to be really strong with things like Steven, Professor's Letter, Skyla. It's basically assuring that you're not really going to run out of cards like ever, because you can make these crazy plays where you puzzle a time for energy recycler, you do it again. Yeah, I mean, you're never really going to run out of cards with this deck. Even if it gets to the point where you just have a bunch of energy in there, that's perfectly fine, because again, Lapras is really big and bulky, so this is just a great way to assure that you're always attaching. And I think he said in an interview that as long as you're attaching every single turn, it's really hard for your opponent to lose, or for you to lose, I should say, because I mean, they can't really do much. I mean, if you start whiffing the energy, that's when it kind of goes downhill, because you can't use the other attacks. You know, against like a speed Darkrai deck, maybe they can kind of overwhelm you, but otherwise, you know, if you have the energy on the board, it's really hard to come back against this deck. And then finally, he plays 10 water energy. It's a nice clean amount. It's not 14 or 15 energies that I've seen in some Quad Lapras builds. Those builds are really focusing on max potion, but I think James's is a little bit different because it's just healing a little bit at a time, and then later game you're also attacking. So his build's a little bit different in that regard, but 10 energies is nice, combined with something like Professor's Letter and Skyla, Steven, Energy Recycler. He has a ton of outs to draw into the energy. So, and he definitely tested it before, I'm sure he did. So, you know, that is going to be the deck, guys. I'm pretty sure I gone over every card in the deck. If I haven't, let me know in the comments. But yeah, I like this deck because it's really disruptive, and it's also, like I said, it's not really that expensive of a deck to make. You know, those are the decks I really like because, you know, if you're on a budget, you know, if you're new to the game, you don't really have a whole lot of money to be investing in like Shamans or Tapu Leles or anything like that. So it really fits the bill in that regard. But let me know in the comments what changes you guys would make with Guardians Rising. I know there's a lot of really cool cards in the set, like Fill Blower, which is going to be discarding stadiums and tools and things like that. Are there any other changes you would make? Do you have any questions for James? I should be able to reach out to him because he actually lives in the same city as me. He actually goes to the same card shop, so hopefully I can reach out to him and maybe we can even get like a PTCGO match or even like a local match or something going. But let me know what you guys want to see. But in the meantime, this has been Zach with Top Deck Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.